Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. Hello and welcome, and I'm releasing this episode on Bank Holiday Monday of a challenging wet one where hospitality is currently only trading outdoors, if at all. And lots of very motivated and patient customers sat under umbrellas and wrapped in blankets, and once more, I feel proud of the hospitality sector for just getting on with what can often seem ridiculous guidelines. Looking at customers in the freezing cold and wind with an empty restaurant just a few feet away is very, very difficult when hospitality is hardwired into your soul. But seeing the team running around with blankets and heaters and umbrellas and trying to assure that everyone is still smiling makes me very, very proud and reaffirms my love for this fantastic sector. So much more about being human than being a business. Anyway, best of luck to you if you're trying to operate at the moment, or if you're a customer and you're trying to warm up over your icy cold beer. Hopefully, we will be back open indoors again soon across the country. Now, I think you are going to fall in love with Dan, today's guest, and the Lake District farmers for a whole heap of reasons. Firstly, the Lake District is just an utterly stunning part of the world, so anything that we can do to support it and the way of life that has been going on there for hundreds of years, I personally think is really important. Traditional farming, where animals can roam free on the fells, for me is a big part of this. Not only does it protect a way of life and lead to happy animals literally a million miles away from modern intensive production techniques, but clearly it creates nicer animals for the food system too. Lake District farmers supply most of the best chefs and the best restaurants in the country, as you are about to discover. But more than that, this is also a tale of perseverance, of business acumen, of learning and making things up as you go, of responding to business catastrophe and adapting fast to keep the business running. Dan and his team's perseverance and commitment comes across in so many of the stories that he tells. Whether that's being found half-clothed, having slept in the delivery van before meeting an important potential customer, or relocating the entire business over a weekend following a fire, or simply realising that if you have a 1 in 100 chance of making something happen, you've just got to repeat it 100 times. And we also touch on the ethics of meat consumption and the carbon impact of our diets, so plenty in here for everyone. I very much hope you enjoy the chat, and if you do, as always, a review on your podcast player of choice is hugely appreciated. Or get in touch and send me your feedback via the website humansofhospitality.co.uk, where you can also become a patron or make a one-off donation to keep this podcast on the air and advert-free, and motivate me to keep finding awesome humans to chat with. Right, let's go and meet Dan. Enjoy the conversation. Cheers. Dan Austin, Managing Director of Lake District Farmers. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Hugely appreciate you sparing the time to chat. Can I just ask, Dan, because unfortunately, despite the fact that I love the Lake District, we're not face to face, but where in the world are you this morning, Dan?
I'm on Walney Island this morning, by the beach. It's very ironic because it's got a beach and it's in Cumbria and we rarely get sun, but we do have some nice sunshine today, so it's beautiful.
So where's that then? Is that's on the coast, is it? Or
yeah, so I live in Barrow-in-Furness,
okay.
which is a big shipbuilding town, BAE Systems, etc. Our animals are sourced throughout the Lake District, so Langdale, Preston, Borrowdale, etc. But I am a Barrow boy, born and bred, and Walney is a little island just off Barrow-in-Furness.
Amazing. All right. Well, I'm by the beach as well, so that makes me feel better. I was going to be deeply envious because I imagined you, I don't know, sat on the top of a stone wall on a fell, sort of, smoking a pipe, looking out over the lakes. But we're coastal brothers, so that's better.
I will be doing that on Monday. So.
Oh, will you? Oh man. Damn, I want to be up there. Right, you represent some incredible farms, and genuinely, I think the Lake District must be one of the most beautiful places on the planet, let alone in England. I adore it. But for those who've not heard of Lake District farmers, can you just explain to people a little bit about what do you do as a business?
I mean, basically, we represent a farming cooperative. And I would say that Lake District Farmers is the shop window for brilliant farms who produce in a brilliant way and just create excellent products. I mean, if you like, I can tell you a little bit about how it started, where the idea came from, if you want me to.
Well, I'm gonna come back to that actually, but I like that. That's a really simple opener. Brilliant farmers, brilliant produce. So we will come into how it started, but just to give people a context as to how much you've achieved, I suppose. We'll start a little bit deeper into the journey because you look after some incredible restaurants, some of the best chefs in the country. When you look back over the last decade that it's been running, are there any particular events or particular customers that you're particularly proud to serve?
We're incredibly proud of our entire customer base. Like you said, we work with some incredible chefs. I think if we talk about sort of pivotal moments, I think the first big one for us was Marcus Waring, because we were a very, very young company back in 2009, and we had this great product, but we didn't have any reputation. We'd only been going sort of 3-4 months or whatever. And we knew that we had to work with somebody of real caliber so that people would take us seriously and would look at our product. And I remember talking with Alan Williams, who was head chef at the Barclay at the time with Marcus. And I promised him if he took a sample from us, it'd be the best beef, the best lamb he'd ever tasted. And I said, if not, I'll give you a farm for free. Now,
Wow.
I didn't have a farm to give him, Mark, because I don't own a farm. So it was a very, very big gamble. I just wanted to really convince him.
Do you think he believed you? Do you think he believed he was really going to get a farm?
No, I think he found it quite amusing, Al. He's a great guy, he's Alan. So he took these samples and he called us after we tried them, and he said, "Yeah, let's sit down, let's do some business." And that really changed everything for us because at that stage I was a 21-year-old boy. I was walking into restaurants, very young man, no reputation, and I'm trying to work with the very, very best in the industry with no real credibility at that stage. So when I was able to walk in and say, we supply Marcus Waring, people would listen. They thought that this must be a quality product if Marcus is using it. And then, of course, we've had the opportunity to work with so many fantastic chefs after that. Gordon Ramsay, Jason Atherton, Angela Hartnett, Tom Akins, Brett Graham, Phil Howard. We've worked with the very, very best, so we're very lucky.
Are there any great chefs, right, that you don't supply? Where you keep thinking, why is it that? Because literally, when I read the list of who you supply, you're like, my God, that's everybody, But are there any where you've been knocking on the door and they've not quite given in yet? Like, this might be the opportunity. We're going to embarrass them and say, look at all these others that are doing it.
Well, we're not knocking on any doors just at the moment, but when we start to knock on some doors, I'm sure there's a few more names.
I was going to get a name out of your hot list.
How diplomatic was that? It was very diplomatic, wasn't it?
You were like a politician. I was like, he's got to have a little list there. He's got a post-it note on his desk where he's going, right, who am I ringing this afternoon? Yeah, it's got to be one of those Oliver bloody guys. Or no, good. There's none left. So we will come back to the sort of start of that, how you did it and stuff like that. But is there a problem you're trying to solve? I suppose because apart from obviously you've got to be a business, you've got to raise some cash. But is there a problem? Is there a problem with intensive farming, or is there a specific problem with the route to market for some of the incredible farmers you represent? What was it you were trying to do apart from run a business?
I think the first thing we wanted to do was give farms proper support. I grew up on my granddad's farm, and he was a wonderful man, my granddad, my hero really. And I would see him get up every day, 5 a.m., and he worked incredibly hard, and he really looked after his animals. And he had such a special relationship with his animals. And when we started Lake District Farmers, I guess it was just as simple as wanting to give people like him a proper price, a fair price, and proper support, and I guess enable people to give their animals a better life. and produce a better product. And that was what it was all about. It's a little bit like fair trade. We say we will pay you a better price. We'll pay you an above market price. What we want in return for that is incredible quality, and of course we want the animals to be looked after and respected and treated incredibly well. And all of the farmers that we work with are such passionate people. They really care about their animals. I think that the problem pre-LDF was that these farms put so much cost and so much effort into producing these animals perfectly and really looking after them. And then when they took them to the auction mat, they get put in the ring with every other animal that's been produced. And there is a market price for that animal on that day. What we wanted to be for these farms was the company that said, we will take X amount of animals from you every single week or every other week, whatever that agreement may be, and we will pay you X price across the entirety of the year. So you have a regular income. You know what you can invest into those animals. You know that you're going to be paid that price regardless of what's happening in the market. If there is an influx, as an example, of product that comes from overseas, and the market price drops, we will still pay you the same price because we know that your costs are still the same. So it's just taking farms, I guess, off that roller coaster of market fluctuation and saying, you produce for us every week and we'll pay you the same every week. Our restaurants, on the back of that as well, our restaurants know that they're creating sustainability through their purchase. And they also know that they're going to get consistent pricing from us, because if we're paying the same price, we can afford to charge the same price. And it just gives everybody that consistency.
It's interesting, is it? So, what, of course, well, because it does seem, absolutely crazy that how can you know, whether it's feed or how much space you can give those animals, or how well you can treat them, if the price is constantly fluctuating, you don't know what the end sale price is going to be. It must be almost impossible to farm in any other way. How did we get into this problem? Is this the story of the big bad supermarkets again driving the price of stuff to the bottom, or was it just a change in consumer trends where maybe these farms before were supplying the local butchers? What had happened? Because presumably this was putting the traditional way of farming in the Lake District at risk. If you couldn't find a better route to market, then that style, that lack of intensive farming, presumably would have had to disappear. So what had caused the problem in the first place?
I think that I think the supermarkets have certainly played a part. I don't think anybody could really sit here and say that they haven't. I think there's still a great deal of supermarkets out there that don't buy British produce. Certainly not across the entire range. I think Morrison's, as an example, they made a stance and said we're going to buy all British, and that is absolutely superb. Price, as ever, is driven by supply and demand, isn't it? So if, as an example, every supermarket in this country said we're going to buy all British produce, the demand would be huge, and the supply would have to measure up to that. And that would mean that British farmers got a better price. Trends is definitely a part of it too. Lamb, as an example, at Easter, everybody wants lamb. And the price of lamb is huge for that sort of 4 to 6 week period. It's also the time in which your hoggets, which are your last year's lambs, are very, very low on the ground, and there's only a few left, and your spring lambs are just coming up to being ready. So your supply is actually quite short and your demand is huge. But then after that 6 week period, the price starts to go down again. So seasonality and trends definitely play their part too. And I think that sometimes we're just not educated enough on the food that we're buying and the impact that our purchasing trends have. And I think these sorts of conversations are incredibly important. I mean, let's look at venison as an example. We've got a problem in the UK with overpopulation of wild deer, and we have some huge businesses within this country importing venison. How can that be the case? It's
I don't
crazy.
know, Dan. Are you going to tell us?
You know how diplomatic I am, Mark, but
Whose fault was it, Dan? Come on,
you
spill the
know
beans.
the nuts and bolts are we have an overpopulation of venison in this country, and we have some supermarket chains importing venison. It's because it's cheaper. It's crazy. I think we all have to take some responsibility in looking.
Yeah, well, that is exactly the reason why I launched this podcast, was the frustration of, I suppose, in my side of the world, at the service end of the hospitality trade, was the sort of growth in the multinational big corporates, doing exactly the same thing in the restaurant world as maybe the supermarkets are doing, which is importing rubbish produce and making it sound sexy on a menu. And you thinking, God, there's an opportunity here. If the consumer was better educated and if they spend their pound better, then it really can transform the sort of world we live in. So it's exactly why we're having this conversation. It must feel like quite a responsibility, because presumably, is it fair to say that if you hadn't found a way of getting a premium market to sell to where you can guarantee these prices, which is challenging to do, and you've done that through finding the best chefs and some of the best restaurants in London, if you hadn't done that, do you think some of these farms would no longer exist and wouldn't be following that sort of more traditional farming method?
I think LDF. We never like to sit here and say that these farms have survived because of us. We've definitely been the shop window for these farms, and there's been plenty of farmers that have said to us that without LDF, it's very possible that these farming methods would disappear. I think we've still got a hell of a lot of work to do, and we are going to have to work incredibly hard to make sure that we can continue to maintain these farming methods. I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we have in front of us over the next few years is, with our exit from Europe, the grant funding from Europe is going to stop. For a lot of hill farms, the European grants are absolutely what keep them going. That was put into place to make food cheaper. It did allow farms to essentially produce at a loss and still remain sustainable. And the biggest challenge for us is going to be replacing that revenue over the next 7 years as it's phased out, because it's a huge amount of revenue. I think a lot of people have this image of a farmer who is a millionaire and owns thousands of acres of land, and also gets these grants from government or European government. If you look at a lot of our farms, a lot of our Herdwick farms, as an example, they're actually leased from the National Trust. So these guys aren't millionaires. They do it out of passion. They work 7 days a week. They're up and down a fell at 2,000 to 3,000 feet. You can't go up there with a quad bike because you just can't get up there with a quad bike, and they have to go up and shepherd and look after and check on their animals, who are essentially wild, really, pretty much in the Lake District. And without that grant funding, that way of life could well become unsustainable. So we've got to look at how we can replace that revenue, because the last thing we want to do is end up buying produce from farms that are producing on a mass scale. We always want to be that specialist route with that really exceptional product and that romantic story, I guess, of animals just being really looked after.
Because it isn't as simple as it as just buy British or buy foreign. It's not only buy British, but it's also buy British, but ideally, certainly, if with our ethics and ethos and perhaps quality, which we'll come on to, but it's buy the traditional breeds, it's buy from more traditional farms. Is it realistic? Well, I suppose that to describe the sort of farms then that you represent, and you alluded to it then, I suppose. But what makes them special? These are high. There's no fences. The animals are outside most of the year, I suppose. What's different about the farmers you represent compared to what I suppose is the more dominant and I'll call it intensive farming that I guess is dominating the country.
Well, it's like you said, mate. It's traditional against modern. Modern farming methods have been created to produce animals for less money. That's where these modern techniques have come from. If we do a quick comparison between, Herdwick sheep and your usual commercial sheep, something like a Texel, a Herdwick is a Highland sheep. So basically, they will be lambed on lowland. They'll be born on lowland. And the farmer will look after them for that first sort of 2 to 3 weeks whilst they're taking to mum and just check that everything's okay, and that they're able to feed from mum, etc., etc. And then after 3 weeks, those sheep will be at the fell gate, and they will want to go up the fell. They want to go 2 to 3,000 feet, and they want to be in their natural environment where there is absolutely no fences whatsoever. And the herdwicks have an incredible hefting instinct. So when they go up on the fell, they will stay on that fell for the rest of their lives. You will get the odd wanderer. And we've had sheep that have gone, 30, 40, 50 miles and then being brought back. But as a general rule, they will stay on that fell because of their hefting instinct.
Sorry, what's hefting, Dan?
Hefting is basically that they will stay in the same place. They don't need fences to control them. They don't need fences to manage them. They know what home is, and they know where home is. I'll tell you an incredible story, Mark. We had a farmer, and he sold a Herdwick Yow to a farm on the coast near Workington. Now, this farmer was right in the centre of the Lake District, and this animal had got out of the farm in Workington. It had got out of the field, and it made its way home. It literally made its way home around 50 miles.
Wow,
Um,
really?
and it's just that hefting instinct of knowing where home is. It's quite incredible. In fact, the farmer laughed and said to me, "It's the only sheep I've ever sold twice." Because he told this farmer that it had made his way back, and he didn't believe him. So he said, "It's the only sheep I've ever sold twice."
Wow.
So if you look at that, and up at 2,000 and 3,000 feet of sea level on the fells of the Lake District, you get all these incredible nutrients and mosses and grasses and that variation to the diet. And the sheep are incredibly fit because they're up and down, they're working incredibly hard. And it's all of those different things that contribute to this incredible flavour profile. And because they're produced in that natural setting, our herdwicks will be a minimum of 12 months old, minimum 12 months before they come into LDF. Anywhere between sort of 12 and 22 months, really. Whereas if you look at a commercial sheep, it will be, born on lowland, produced on lowland. It'll be given some feed to finish it before it goes into the commercial market, wherever its end user is, and they will live for around 5-6 months. So they live for half the time, and on lowland pastures with a diet of just sort of grass, really, as opposed to really living a life and going up and living on the fell and having all these beautiful different arrays of grasses available to them. I mean, on one of our farms, they have 86 different varieties of traditional grasses. It's like a buffet of the
Wow.
sheep up there, but it's just their natural environment. It's where they want to be, and we're not changing their natural environment to suit a cost centre. We're just saying if that's how they want to live and that's how they've always lived, we should respect that. And if it takes a little bit longer, that doesn't matter. Let's respect the way the animals lived for hundreds of years.
So, what's your perception? Is this how all meat should be produced, and we should just pay more and respect it and maybe eat less, or is this always going to be a niche sort of premium end of the market, and actually you need that intensive system to feed people?
We did an article years and years ago. I always remember it. It was a girl called Elizabeth Hewson. I think she's called Elizabeth Chapman now. She was a wonderful lady. And Brett Graham, who was at the Ledbury, put me in touch with Elizabeth. She's an Australian like Brett. And she had such a huge passion for cattle and cattle production and doing things properly. And she just really loved cattle, as an animal. She deeply respected them. And she asked if she could come and visit some of our farms for a piece that she was writing. And we took her on a farm to her, and she wrote this brilliant piece about how meat should be treated like wine. We should understand the region. We should understand how it's been produced. We should understand what makes it special. We should respect it in the same way, and we should eat it less but pay more. And in this piece, she said that if we cut down our meat consumption by half, essentially half the world would be vegetarian, and we could afford to pay twice as much for that piece of meat when we ate it, and we could buy from responsible producers who really looked after their animals. And for me, if I could pick one way the world should be, that would probably be it. I think we should eat meat a little bit less, but when we do eat it, we should really enjoy it and make sure that we've sourced it from, a sustainable farm that's really looked after the animals. I mean, let's have a talk about carbon. One of my huge frustrations is that it's in the press all the time about the carbon impact, the environmental impact of beef. But how is beef categorized as one product? How are we taking all of these different methodologies of producing beef from around the world and putting them in one section and saying that's the carbon impact of beef? If you compare Australian to American to even mass produced British and then against Lake District farmers, British production, these are very, very different methods of production. And the carbon impacts of each are hugely different. And I think we've got to start reporting information more accurately and not just throwing a headline out there that people are going to read. And I think that, again, that fits in with the piece that Elizabeth wrote, because buying responsibly is not just about making sure that the animal's being looked after and that the farmer has been looked after. It's also about making sure that the planet has been looked after in the production of that animal as well. So if I could pick a way in which we should consume meat, that would be it.
Okay. Do we need animals then to, because some people would say, just don't eat meat. Animals are happy. They'll do their own thing. Is that unrealistic? Do we actually need animals to, for the environment? I know in the sort of circular farms, the nutrients, cows walking across a field can churn up the grass and their sort of, feces kind of, adds nutrients back. And then, other animals come in and eat that grass, or we grow stuff in it. Do you think they're an essential part of the sort of agricultural cycle, or are they a luxury?
I absolutely believe they are, but I don't think that I'm really able to sit here and answer that question. But I certainly believe that they are. I don't think the answer is to stop eating meat if we don't want to stop eating meat. I think the answer is to produce it more responsibly. I mean, just as an example, we've engaged with a university over the past 18 months. We're doing a sample study on 4 of our cattle farms at the moment. And the aspiration is to, as quickly as possible, get these farms to a point where they are carbon neutral. And then as soon as we've got 4 farms that are carbon neutral, we'll use that as a case study, as a comparison. And then we'll look at, another 2 of our farms. Let's get them up to being carbon neutral. Then let's look at another 4 of our farms. Let's get them up to being carbon neutral. And as a business, Lake District farmers would like to be carbon neutral, and I think that that's the answer. If you look at agriculture and the production of meat, this goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So I don't think that we have to stop eating meat. I think we have to look at how did we used to do it. Let's look at how we used to do it hundreds of years ago. Let's go back to that sort of traditional, less intensive way of farming, and let's make it environmentally sustainable and a product that people can respect and enjoy. I think that's the answer.
What are those farms changing then to become carbon neutral? Is this? It's not one of these ones where you just go and invest in a load of trees in the Amazons or whatever. This is genuinely changing the farm specifically, is it, to be carbon neutral?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, planting trees is absolutely a part of it, because it offsets the carbon. That's absolutely a part of it. But it's also about how can we be more efficient? As an example, we work with a brilliant farmer called Tim Winder, and Tim is maybe half a mile away from our factory. Tim, brilliant man, and he's using recycled paper, which is too small. The shreds of paper are too small to be used for anything else, so they would essentially go to landfill. And that's what he beds his cattle in. So when it gets incredibly cold and they're coming inside, or they're on the finish feed or whatever, Tim beds them on this recycled paper, and the cattle absolutely love it. It's incredibly warm for them. It's incredibly clean, and it just sort of sticks to the coat, and then when it dries, it just drops off. So even from a maintaining cleanliness perspective, it really really works. But we're reusing a product that would go for landfill, and then it's about finish feed. Can we use byproducts in the finish feed for the cattle instead of producing a product to put into feed for the animal? Can we actually use a byproduct to produce that finished feed? And even daft things, Mark, like if we buy 2 cattle off Tim a week and then we buy 2 cattle off Michael a week, actually, can Tim put 4 cattle in his trailer that week and take them down to the abattoir? And the next week, can Michael put 4 cattle in his trailer and take them down to the abattoir? Straight away, we've just cut down 2 journeys to the abattoir. So there's a million different things that make it up. And of course, it's not just as simple as planting trees. And I'll be honest, we've really enjoyed looking at it. We're really passionate about it. And when you start looking at it, it's amazing the things that you can do that are ever so simple that can cut down your carbon footprint.
I love that. Some good examples there. I think you can't be somewhere as beautiful as the Lake District and not think about protecting the environment in the same way that one of my restaurants overlooks the sea. And when you're watching the beautiful burnt orange skies and the big ball sort of dropping over the horizon over the ocean, you can't sit there and look at it and in anything but awe and think like everything we can do to protect this. Much as Elon might try and convince us, I'd personally quite happy to live here and not on Mars. It looks a bit rubbish. So, we touched on this just before we started recording. So I would encourage everybody who's listening has to go to your website and just click on the farmers page, I think it is, and watch these beautifully shot videos, choreographed videos that really bring to life some of the stuff that we're chatting about. They're absolutely amazing. Unusual, actually. You don't see many farms that have got such sort of beautiful shots, I suppose, of what's going on. What was the inspiration for those, and what's the reaction been?
The reaction's been incredible, actually, and because we've never done anything like that before. We started in 2009, and we'd be going down and we'd be talking to chefs, and we'd be saying these are the types of farms we deal with, and this is the story, and this is how it's produced, and people really loved it. And what actually started happening was that a lot of restaurants would travel to Cumbria to do a farm tour with us. So we'd take them to the factory and take them to see some of our farms, see how the animals live, how everything is sort of produced. But we never, I guess, because we were an industry company, we were never retail based like District Farmers. We were always exclusive to restaurants. So we'd never really had this huge need, I guess, to have a brilliant social media and to be able to convey that message, because we were always sat in front of chefs talking about it. And when we came to the first lockdown, we very quickly adapted into a retail business to clear the stock that we had left, because obviously everything closed overnight, and we had this huge stock holding because we mature beef as an example for 5 weeks and lamb for 2 weeks. So we had all this stock to clear, and we had an incredible response from a retail perspective, but we didn't have an e-commerce website, so everything was coming through the phone, and it was all crazy. So when we cleared the stock, we went home and sat down and said, what should we do now? And that's when we developed a proper e-commerce website, and we wanted to do all of the things that we'd never really had time to do. And we wanted to do, produce videos that our restaurants would be able to promote and say, this is our product and this is where it comes from. And obviously from a retail perspective, it's allowed us to get our message out there very, very quickly and let people know what we're about.
Yeah. So one of the guys that you've got on this video, Eric Tailforth, is it one of your farmers?
Yes.
He's got this great love for his sheep. I think I only watched it once, but I thought he almost had a tear in his eye. I almost did as well. And there was another one, I think, of a couple of cows that had been born really close together. They weren't brothers, but they were sort of treated as brother. And the level of respect that the farmers had for the animals in sort of making sure that they stayed together was amazing. But if we take Eric as an example, can you tell me a bit about Eric and what he does?
I'll tell you a funny story about Eric, Mark. And actually, so when you're talking about them 2 cattle that were born together, the man on that video is a man called Stephen Airy. And when we first started Lake District Farmers, I went to see Stephen And Stephen is central to everything that goes on in Cumbria from a farming perspective. Um, and when I talked to him about what we wanted to achieve at Lake District Farms, and this was before we opened, I said to Stephen, who should we be talking to? Who's producing in the best way? Could you give me a list of 10 farmers who I could sit down with? And one of those farmers was Eric Tilforth. And I went to see Eric. As I said, I was 21 years old. I went with my business partner and my mentor at the time, a man called Ray Armstrong. Ray was incredible. And we sat in Eric's kitchen. And I said, Eric, we are going to take this product to London. We're going to sell it to the best chefs in the world. We're going to give you an above market price. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. We're going to really, really support you. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just had this idea. And when I left his farm, Eric's wife said to him, do you think he'll be able to do it? Do you think he'll be able to deliver everything he's just promised? And Eric said, no. And she said, are you going to back him? And he said, yes. And she said, why? And he said, because you just never know. and I don't think Eric even believed that we'd be able to achieve this. But I've had some incredible moments with Eric. I mean, we've sat at the top of the Gherkin together and eaten his Herdwick lamb, which was a very, very emotional, experience for Eric. We've taken him to London to do demonstrations at restaurants where he's given speeches. He gave a speech for restaurant associates at a chef's forum in front of around 1,000 people. And it was incredible to listen and to see this Cumbrian farmer stood in this huge glass building in the centre of London, talking to this huge business who have supported him so intimately. And to watch him do that, it kind of made me realise the journey that we've been on.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's so much more than, that's why I started with the business question, because it's so much more than that, isn't it? And yeah, that's awesome, because he just looks like it's hard work, hard graft for him, pottering around. He's an old guy now, I suppose. And
He's 35, Eric. 35 years old. It's just incredibly hard work. I mean, Eric went to be basically to work for the man who leased Millbeck Farm as a young man, and he was there for 5 years learning under this gentleman, and then he went on to be the shepherd at Millbeck Farm. It's actually a farm which was purchased initially by Beatrix Potter, which you'll have seen in the video, no doubt. Beatrix wrote Peter Rabbit, of course, and all those amazing novels, but she had a huge passion for Herdwick sheep. And she bought, I think it was 8 farms that she bought, and she gave them to the National Trust, but she basically said that they belong to the Herdwick sheep. So when a farmer finishes his lease, he has to give the next tenant who's coming in. They have to get 400 Herdwick sheep with that farm, because Beatrix said that the farm belongs to the sheep. So it was actually Beatrix Potter really that started all of these incredible farms across the Lake District and in the Langdale Valley, and Eric's farm is one of those.
Amazing. Well, lucky sheep, because it's a beautiful spot. As I said, we come up to Coniston quite regularly, and so we've been to some of the places that I think Beatrix was based near there, and yeah, absolutely stunning. So then let's go back, because you started this, like you said, really young, 21 years of age. What was your role in those early days? How did you? Because you weren't just employed; you helped co-found the business. How were you so motivated, and what had you seen that motivated you to do that? And what was your original role in the business?
Well, I'd worked for a meat company previously for around 2 years, and it was a pretty good company. I was basically office administrator there, really. I kind of ended up with a job there by accident, if I'm honest. My uncle just offered me it, and I went up there. My plan was to go and do an accountancy course after about 3 months, and I just fell in love with. I fell in love with the industry. I fell in love with the passion of the chefs, and for whatever reason, that business didn't work out, unfortunately. And when that business closed, a guy who I'd previously worked for, which is Ray Armstrong, so I'd worked for Ray when I was around 18 years old. Ray came to me and said, do you want to do a meat business on your own? I've heard you've done really well across the past couple of years and that you've learned a lot. And would you like to go out on your own? And I'm thinking, right, wow, okay. So, I'm 21 years old. I've got this incredible businessman who's offering to invest in me and to be my mentor. We know that there's a factory available to lease, and there's some sort of customer base there for us to start off. And there's a small team in place that we could also employ straight away. So the infrastructure is there. And as soon as that opportunity arose, I thought this can be my chance, to look after farmers, to look after people like my granddad, to really make a difference, I guess, to the industry. So it was a hell of a lot of luck, and a hell of a lot of belief as well, because for Ray Armstrong to come to me at 21 years old as an office administrator for a meat company that didn't work out, and to say, I'll invest in you and we'll do this together, that was what allowed us to make it happen. And I kind of did the meat side of things. I was sales director, and I was super passionate about the product and the farms and where we would source from and the chefs we would sell to. But Ray was very, very much the businessman. That was the bit that I didn't have. I was hugely naive at that age, no doubt about it. And Ray was the man who guided me with all the business side of things. And without Ray, there is no doubt we wouldn't be where we are today or anywhere near it.
Yeah. And when you say sales director, this was a startup. So, presumably, were you the person who was actually, getting in the car or getting on the train and going down to London? Was the target market always the sort of the creme de la creme of London restaurants?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we knew that. If you look at the saturation of where the very, very best restaurants were at that time, most of the really, really good restaurants were in London. There was, of course, brilliant restaurants in other parts of the country, but you just had so many in this, in this one city. And of course, the very, very best restaurants can afford to pay the best price for the best produce. So it just kind of made sense for us to go there. And I'm glad that we did. So I was the person, yes, who was getting in the van. At that time, Mark, we had no money really at all. So I wouldn't even go on the train. I would work, and then when I finished work, I would wait for the driver who was travelling to London with the orders, and then I'd get in the van with my pillow, and I'd sleep in the van. Any moment I wasn't sleeping, I was annoying the driver, listening to Celine Dion or whatever, CD player, singing my heart out. And then I would literally sleep in the van, wake up when we got to London. We'd maybe stop at services to have a splash of water or whatever and a brush of the teeth. And then we'd be into a restaurant and we'd be selling. And then I'd travel back with the van so that we didn't have to pay for hotels either. So now we get the train. But in the early days, we did everything we could to save cost where possible.
Yeah. And then were you literally just sort of, turning up and walking into restaurants, or did you have appointments to see these people? What were those early days like, and any memorable experiences, I suppose, of those early wins?
There is. I remember one time. I remember we got a call, and somebody had asked me to come and have a meeting with them. They said it's really, really urgent. It's a big contract. Could you come? Could you meet us tomorrow? So I said, yeah. So that night I jumped in the van. We went down to London. As I said, didn't have a hotel or anything like that. And I was getting changed out of my pajamas, and putting my sort of suit pants and my shirt on. And we parked up around the back of the restaurant, and the owner, who I was meeting for this big contract, comes out of the back door, and I'm stood there with no top on. I've just got my pajama pants sort of around my ankles at this stage, and I'm essentially stood in my boxers, just about to put the whole suit on so that I looked presentable. And he came out and he said, "Are you Dan from Lake District?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's totally me. If you could just give me 5 minutes, I'm going to get changed." and put some clothes on, and then we'll come in the restaurant and we'll have a coffee. And I don't know how, but we actually got that. We did get that deal.
They got to respect. Surely you got to respect somebody who goes to that level of effort to. Yeah.
I guess so. It seemed to work for us on that day anyway, in that instance. So that was
Yeah.
great.
I've got a fishmonger who supplies me down here locally in Bournemouth, and he always insists. I phone him up and I'm like, "Look, any chance we could just meet up? Just want to go through some bits." And he'll be like, "Yeah, no worries, Mark, but I'm going to pop home and have a shower and put my suit on." I'm always like, "Look, you don't need to. I just need you for 10 minutes. Just come down now, hop in the van." But he always insists that he's going to go and have a shower and put his suit on before he comes to see me. And much as I find it, quirky and eccentric, I have full respect for the fact that he's obviously been doing that for 30 years, and before he goes to see any customer, he gets changed and comes out and sees me. So
Yeah, good on him. Good on him.
yeah, I quite like it. Not smooth sailing. Because you make it sound easy, isn't it? It's like, get brought up by a granddad, fall in love with meat. Some bloke comes and offers you a job when you're only 21, and you get in a van and you flog a bit. I'm sure there were some challenges. Some of which, did I read that you had a fire in 2015 and actually lost everything and started again, and then you managed to get caught in a landslide in the new place. So what were some of those sort of teething problem journeys, I suppose, and just how hard was it to get set up?
Yeah, the fire was tough. It was a Saturday afternoon. I always remember it. Saturday afternoon, I was getting my hair cut, and I had this problem with my phone at the time. So even if I had it on loud, it wouldn't make any noise when somebody called me. The tone wouldn't go off. It was like it was permanently on silent. And I was getting my hair cut, and I remember looking at my phone, and I had something like 18 missed calls, and it was David work, Russell work, Stuart work, Keith work, everybody from work. The landlord who we leased the factory from had called me. My mum had called me.
Wow.
And the big one for me was the local newspaper. And when I saw the local newspaper, I thought,
Shit.
this is bad. And I called Russ, who's our sales director, and he's been with us a long time, Russ. And he sounded pretty emotional. He said, I think you need to get up here now, Dan. So I got in the car with half a haircut, and I drove up there. And when I got there, I think there was six fire engines there. And I remember being stood up on a hill with my mum looking down on the factory. We'd climbed up on this hill to look down on it to try and see what was going on. And you're really emotional in those instances, and you say stupid things, and there's no rhyme or reason. And I remember saying to my mum, "It's going to be okay, mum, because all the fridges, all the panels are fireproof and all the doors are fireproof." And I remember her looking at me and she said, "Daniel, you need to start to get your head around it, because you need to start to think about what you're going to do, because it's not going to be okay, son." And I said, "No, it is, mum." And she said, "No, it's not." She said, "You've lost everything. It's gone. So you need to start to think about what you're going to do. You need to start to think about what the next move is." And it must have been a couple of minutes later that the roof sort of fell in on production, and we watched this roof fall in. And I said to my mum, maybe I should do something different. I've been doing this for years, and it's been a good run for us, and maybe this is my time to do something different. And I can't really tell you what my mum said word for word, because you'd have to edit it out. Because she's a strong Cumbrian woman, is my mum, and she told me exactly how it was. But she basically said that I was full of it, and that I couldn't do anything else because I cared too much about this. And she said to me, "Do not come home until you've signed the lease."
Wow.
And she turned to Hayden and she said, Hayden's my business partner, Ray's son. And she said to Hayden, "Make sure that he's got coffee." And I remembered a piece of advice that Ray had given me very, very early on in my career. And he said to me, "Mark," this was when we were trying to get a big name chef to give us some credibility. And Ray said to me, "Dan, if something's 100 to 1, all you have to do is do it 100 times." And people miss that.
Yeah, it's true.
People don't play the math. And he was talking to me about getting a big name chef. And he said, if it's 100 to 1 that you're going to get one of these big names, then you call 100 of them, and you knock on 100 doors, and you walk in 100 restaurants. Because if it's 100 to 1, in one of those visits, you will pick up a customer. And I thought about that piece of advice when the factory was burning down, and I just called everybody. I called everybody who I knew in the industry, and I just said, "It's Dan from Lake District. This is what's happening. We're going to need to relocate as quickly as possible. Do you know anybody that's got a factory that we may be able to lease?" And after a lot of phone calls, I spoke to our veal farmer, actually, brilliant man called Andrew Barraclough. And Andrew said, "You need to speak to Steve Dunning, because Steve has a site which is available off Junction 38. So that's about an hour away from where our factory was at the time. So I shot up to see Steve. I called him. I organised a meeting. Me and Hayden went up there, and we agreed terms on leasing the factory that evening. So we burned down on the Saturday and we reopened on the Monday.
No way. That's
And
crazy, isn't it?
and I remember, we had some customers, Mark, ringing us on the Monday, and they didn't know we'd had a fire yet because we hadn't had a chance to sort of communicate it. So they would be ringing us, and we'd be like, "Yeah." So, and they'd be like, "What happened over the weekend?" We'd be like, "Well, the
Yeah,
factory burned down. We are in a new factory.
that's mental.
We don't have the full product range available for you." And we'd have that conversation. But in that, particularly that first week of moving into the new factory, I learned the true value of all the relationships that we'd built across a period of years, because we had chefs ringing us up and saying, Dan, Russ, Hayden, Phil, they were just saying, "What do you want us to buy? You tell us what you want us to buy, and we will put it on the menu. So whatever you have, whatever you had at the abattoir that you've managed to transfer, whatever you've got in stock, you tell us, and we will buy it from you, and pay you full price for it." And we got such incredible support, and that was in the June, and then in December we had Storm Desmond, and I was in London at the time, and I got a call from one of the other business partners, who was Steve Winwood. Steve's my uncle, and Steve was the accountant, and he said, "We've had a landslide, and it's come through the back of the factory." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we've had a landslide, and basically it's come through the back of the factory, and it's buried the lamb fridge and the pork fridge." And I thought he was winding me up, man, because we'd literally just
Oh,
recovered from the fire and got the product back to where it needed to be, and got the fridges running properly, and the aging right. And I honestly thought he was winding me up. And he sent me pictures. It's quite incredible, really. I think it was 10,000 tons or something that had rolled down off the hill and basically bust through the back wall of the factory and buried the stock. And again, it was just that, the value of the relationships that we had. I mean, we had farmers turning up with diggers to dig out the back of that factory for us.
really?
They turned up, they brought all the equipment, they dug it out for us, so that we could make things happen quicker. We had to basically split the factory in half so that we could operate properly and safely. So we had to just split it in half completely. All the stock that was in the fridges that were impacted was obviously a write-off. And we had to take half of the team around the back of the factory with shovels, and the other half of the team are in the front of the factory and they're producing. And we worked so hard. Because it was December. And we had incredible support from our farmers and our customers again. And I think that after those two instances, we realised that we could pretty much get through anything. And I think that that's served us incredibly well. All the challenges we've had since that, we kind of realised that whatever anything throws at this team will come through it.
Amazing. So where does COVID rank then in your? Is that the third? It happens in threes. That's it. You're going to have an amazing 30 years ahead, Dan. Because surely there can't be any more than three. But yeah, how does that compare?
You'd have to hope so, wouldn't you? I hope it is the last one. How does it compare? I think COVID has been the most challenging. I do. I think probably the difference with COVID is that everybody's been going through the same thing. And you know what our industry is like. Our industry is an incredible industry. I've spoke to our competition, the people that we compete with day in, day out on a regular basis, and we've given each other advice, and we've maybe sold each other stock where we needed to because things are a bit thin on the ground, or we have this huge order we can't fulfill. And I think the difference with COVID is that everybody in the industry has pulled together and done everything that they can to support each other. I think it's a long way out of this. I think we have a lot to do in hospitality to recover from coronavirus, but the difference between that and the fire and the landslide is that we're all in this together. That's given me a great sense of comfort, and I think that I've had brilliant advice from brilliant people, and because of the industry that we're in, I think we'll come back from this easier than we did the other two.
Yeah. Okay. Some of the changes as a result of COVID. Did you sell direct to consumer before, and these boxes and all this, the sort of meat that people can now buy direct? Is that literally as a result of the pandemic?
It's literally as a result of the pandemic. Yeah, we were exclusive to restaurants, and we had such demand for the product, I guess, that we were in a really lucky position. So if you go pre-coronavirus, we had a waiting list of customers basically, and as such, we couldn't supply the public because we didn't have enough product to supply the demand that we had from our restaurants. But as I said, when the restaurants closed, it was like, one day they're open and the next day they're closed, and that's how it happened in the first lockdown. And we had around £250,000 worth of stock in the fridges, and we're sat there saying, okay, the restaurants are closed. That's our only route to market. All of our customers are closed, and we've got £250,000 worth of stock in the fridge. What are we going to do? And we just put it out on social media. Basically, we had about 2,000 followers, and we put it out and said, we're going to supply the public direct. Just call the office if you'd like an order. We did sort of set boxes to try and utilize the stock as efficiently as possible to make sure that, we were selling enough of everything, as opposed to lots of one product. And it just got shared and shared and shared and shared. And, our customers were sharing it, saying, you should buy meat from these guys. They're incredible. They've never supplied the public before. This is our butcher. And that support basically got our message out there. And the phones in the office were just absolutely off the hook. We had sort of 10 or 12 people just on the phones, just answering phone calls. And we were taking sort of manual payments with a card machine, and then everything was handwritten. Every order was handwritten because we didn't have, any infrastructure in place. And the team at LDF were incredible actually through that period. I don't know how we didn't drop an order or miss an order or
Wow.
product wrong,
Yeah.
but they did a really, really good job. And as I said, second lockdown, we decided to develop an e-commerce website so that we had a proper infrastructure to do it. But we cleared all that stock. So literally through that, putting them posts out on social media and people sharing it, we cleared all of that stock during the first lockdown.
Amazing what can be done when you need to do it, isn't it? We rally round. Will you continue to do this once the restaurants reopen?
Yes, we will, because we have to. We're a very loyal company, Lake District Farmers. These people, the general public, our customers, they've supported us. They've got our business through this. They've allowed us to support our supply chain and to continue to buy from our farms. Of course, we haven't been buying as much as we would if the restaurants were reopened, but they've still put us in the position to support our supply chain. So we can't turn our back on those people when the restaurants reopen. We can't say, "Oh, we're going to be exclusive to restaurants again," because it just wouldn't be right, and it's not the type of company that we are. I do think that in the long term we will probably go to membership only in terms of the retail side of our business, because that will allow us to control how much we sell and ultimately control the quality, which is why we always had a waiting list of customers for restaurants, because we would never oversell something. We'll only sell it if it's perfect. We'll only let it go out the door if it's perfect. So I think we'll have to go to membership only to allow us to control the amount of sales that go through. But everybody who's purchased from us will automatically be given a membership.
Yeah, interesting. And then you've done the boxes as well. You've teamed up with various chefs. I think I saw 3 or 4 on your website. So you're actually doing these sort of. Is that something that you're sort of reselling on their behalf, or have you got them in to create these boxes specifically for you? How does that work?
So during the first lockdown, we teamed up with Howard Arms. Sally rang me and said, should we do a box together? And we did a sort of a Howard Sunday roast box. And it was really, really successful. But we only did it in London. We only had the sort of infrastructure to do it in London, really. So second time around, I had a chat with Jason Atherton. We had a chat with Rachel from the Gavroche, and we teamed up with Michelle. And we did go London only at the beginning, but there was a lot of people who wanted us to go nationwide. So we had to sort of adapt very, very quickly and change the packaging and look at how we made that possible so that we could go nationwide. And it was a real learning curve for us. But now we're in the position where actually we've become really, really good at it. And how it works is we'll take the orders through our website. We'll give those orders to the restaurant. We'll say we've got, I don't know, 200 boxes going out this week. It's all set menu, of course. The restaurants will produce the food. We will go down to the restaurant. We will basically make all the boxes, pack everything, dispatch everything. We take care of everything from a logistics perspective and a customer service perspective. So from the restaurant's point of view, it's about making sure that they produce the food to an incredible standard, which of course they always do. And we're honoured, really. I mean, for a little meat company from Cumbria to team up with Michelle Roux and Marcus Waring, Jason Atherton, Goodman, it's been incredible for us, really. And of course, it's really made people aware of who we are and sort of extended, I guess, the general public know more about Lake District farmers because of those collaborations. So we'll be forever grateful.
Well, yeah, and likewise them to you, I'm sure. It's just it's a great example, I suppose, of when these things work, and it is symbiotic, isn't it? They really need you to be doing this traditional farming to create the very best produce, and you need a route to market where people are willing to spend a few more quid. So, which we got to draw to a close very shortly, but that probably brings us a little bit then to the future, and I suppose what people can do in general. What's your plea, I guess, to the public, and not everybody clearly can buy from you. So yeah, are you optimistic about the trajectory of farming? Are you pessimistic about it? And to make it, more positive than negative, what would you ask either the public, I suppose, or the industry to do to help?
I'm always optimistic. I'm never pessimistic, ever, because I think where there's a will, there's totally a way. And I think as we go through, we tend to see that as we roll through the years, people are absolutely getting better educated on food. It's becoming more important to people. People are talking about it more. But my first message would be, please buy British, because in whatever context, buying British is more positive than anything else. Even if it is mass produced, it's still better to buy British for our agricultural industry. But I think further on from that, if you can, ask the question: where does it come from? How is it produced? How is the animal looked after? Try and understand that. Try and understand what you're buying, and try and make sure that you're buying responsibly, and try and make sure that you are supporting somebody who's doing things in the right way. That the fundamental things that are important for me are that the animal is being looked after. The animal welfare absolutely comes first. Is the product sustainable? And is it properly sustainable? That's incredibly important. And then from a carbon perspective, are we being responsible? Is it kind to the planet? Are we buying from a source that is focusing on making sure that it does the right things for everybody globally? It's so important. So if we could look at those three things before we purchase a piece of meat, I think that would be awesome.
Agreed. I feel for the public because it's a challenging thing. You and I were in the industry, and even I can struggle to get my head around it. Fish is one, where and some animals move. Don't at least you can. Your animals stay in the field they're supposed to, even on their own. But fish, you're like, not only where were they caught, but where have they come from? What size were they? Was it their breeding season at the time? Do you know if they were pregnant? You're like, my goodness, it's complex. I guess we really need to rely on the industry and the chefs being as well educated as well. I'd love to think that catering schools, and I don't know if they're nailing this yet, but I would love to think that they're really instilling this responsibility right at the point where people are being taught about food, and probably actually for the wider population, it probably needs to be done at schools, I guess.
I think you're right, Mark. And I think one of the things that colleges should be doing is engaging with suppliers. I remember going down to Furness College, which is my local college, maybe 3-4 years ago now, and doing sort of an hour session with the students down there, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it. I think they did anyway. I think that I think colleges and schools, should engage with suppliers, particularly if someone's at college and they're in a culinary setting and they're specifically learning about hospitality, whatever. If it's industry specific. And let's get suppliers in to talk to these students and to talk to them about what responsible purchasing means, what sustainability means. Let's make sure that they walk into the industry with that education already behind them. I know from a Lake District farmers' perspective, we'd love to do that. We'd love to go into colleges and talk to students because it's fundamentally important for the future of the industry. So we definitely would. And I know loads of other suppliers who would absolutely do this.
Amazing. Cool. All right. Well, look, we need to draw to a close, unfortunately, but just, big thanks for doing what you're doing. I just think, like I say, one of my favorite parts of the world, and to know that, those beautiful, good human farmers, following that sort of, proper approach, that they found this route and that you're helping them do that, I think is brilliant. So, hats off to you. Glad it's going well. Glad you've recovered from those various trials and tribulations, and hope you come out the back of this COVID one in good shape. Where should people go if they want to follow your journey, if they want to buy some of the meats? And I suppose a question, if you are a restaurant, do you think when you reopen you will be able to supply again, or are you going to go straight back into a waiting list? But where should people go to find out more?
I think initially we'll probably go back into a waiting list for restaurants. I think just while we work everything out, our priority will be to absolutely make sure that we're supporting our customers properly, and giving them the quality that they need. But hopefully, a short time after we reopen and we get everything re-established, we'll be able to take on some new customers. From a retail perspective, people can pop to our website, which is lakedistrictfarmers.co.uk. Or to follow our story, if you will. We've got our Instagram, which is it's Lake_District_Farmers. So if people want to have a look at our farming videos and our journey, they can either go on our Instagram or they can go on our website, and on the Our Farmers section, and there's some brilliant videos of some of our producers. Just have a general look through the type of farms that we buy from and work with.
Yeah, amazing. They are well worth a look. Okay, Dan, thank you so much. I will leave you to get on with your day. I'll pop in and hopefully see you next time I'm in the lakes. But thanks so much for sparing the time, and best of luck.
Appreciate that, Mark. Thank you very much.
Are you still listening? Well done. An hour on farming in the Lake District, learning about things you never knew you needed to. Good work. Now, I utterly adore having these conversations and learning from such warm and lovely people such as Dan. Thank you so much for joining me on the adventure. Now, I'll be back in 2 weeks with the next show, where at the opposite end of the spectrum, we are off to chat to an international hotelier based in Hong Kong, but with properties dotted around the globe. We'll be touching on different cultures in the global world of hospitality, but also looking at how different countries are managing COVID and how the performance of his estate in various parts of the globe can give us a good feel for what is going on. Should be a good one. Sign up to the newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk or hit the subscribe button on your podcast player of choice to make sure that you don't miss it. Okay, have a great couple of weeks. Cheers.